Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Racha Kudash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And have a couple of headlines on here as, been monitoring the things that have been going on and sort of the different side effects that have been coming from de-escalation with Iran and now the Houthis, Saudi Arabia, and all these other parties getting more and more involved, as the scriptures have foretold would happen. Okay, you also had, which I did a lesson on yesterday, about the integration with the U.S. and Israeli intelligence, which involves technology, surveillance, biotech, and many other things on there. So check that out, for more details on that. But starting off with this, it says Secret Service official sounds alarm. Threat environment highest ever as assassination attempts explode. The threat environment facing individuals under U.S. Secret Service protection, including President Trump, is the highest the agency has ever recorded, a senior official said during a background briefing with reporters, according to CNBC. Now, when you deal with these kind of situations here, some people sort of brush it under the rug because they're like, well, I'm not somebody that is being covered under Secret Service protection. So if those people are the target, then I'm good. But remember what Israel did when they were trying to target some high-ranking Iranian officials. I forgot what city they were in. But they said that once they had intelligence that those officials, or even one of them, was in a certain vicinity, they blew up. They didn't go for the specific individual alone. They blew that shit up, the building that he was in. Right, basically, risking the collateral damage to try and get their target. So what that means is, if they want a target and they know that target is in a certain area, it doesn't matter if it's a public space or not. It's not assassination attempts aren't only like what you'll see in some professional hitman who just like either poisons somebody or snipes them from like super long distance and then that's it, calls it a day. There are also other means where they're more aerial damage or aerial attack, which takes out more people than the intended audience, right? The intended person. And it's usually what happens in the aftermath of such an event that really starts to affect the masses of the people. Okay, because usually in events like that, a state of emergency gets declared and things go on lockdown immediately, depending on how drastic the attack or attempt or assassination is. So something to keep in mind here, right? As it says here, as the person says, what we're seeing now is something I've never seen before, the official said. Speaking on condition of anonymity, head of a public briefing. The Secret Service has lodged roughly 10,000 cases involving threats against government officials, including Supreme Court justices, so far in 2026, a 40% increase from the same period a year earlier. They're increasing in volume and complexity, the official warned. The agency has also recorded a tenfold increase in mental health commitments of individuals suspected of threatening protectees. And basically he's saying here that it's kind of like what this guy, was it Christopher Wray was saying maybe a year or two back, talking about CC's flashing red lights everywhere, basically like alarms of the threat of potential domestic tease, all right, terrorism, which now that's something, once they start pushing stuff like that in the forefront very heavily, you can prepare to see something that's related to that happening. All right. Says here, the timing is not incidental. The briefing came ahead of Friday's rescheduled White House Correspondents Association dinner at the Waldorf Astoria, which Trump is expected to attend, which they're saying here, right, that, the last time that happened, somebody was able to make it through with a gun, right? A shotgun, handgun, knives, according to them. And that was a pretty close call, as they would put it. Jumping down, it says that was not an isolated event, referring to the situation where that man was able to get access into that Waldorf Astoria. I think that's the same place. No, actually, Washington Hilton. There you go. That's where he was able to get access into. Anyway, it says on May 4th, a man was wounded in a firefight with Secret Service personnel near the Washington Monument. Now, remember, this comes amid Trump talking about how Iran wants to assassinate him and how he's left orders to do major damage to them, should that be the case. 3 weeks later, on May 23rd, a gunman approached the White House while Trump was inside the residence, drew a firearm, and discharged multiple rounds before being fatally shot by agents. In February, Secret Service and local police shot and killed a man armed with a shotgun who had breached a secure perimeter at Mar-a-Lago. So they're basically saying that cases of this have gone up, and it's just like one after another, which, once again, when you start to see this kind of language being used, is usually saying, hey, by the time they sound the alarm to the public, it's at a point where they're like, you can likely expect to see something sooner or later. Okay. And interestingly enough, they're doing the whole merging between Israeli forces and the U.S. And, this guy, Bibi, is right there. We know, really, he's the one pulling Trump's strings anyway. So Trump is really just the face, the footman. Next year, we have RBC Commodities chief warns war entering dangerous phase as choke point chaos risks oil above 2008 peak. And this comes in light of the Houthi blockade of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which Iran did warn that they would have them close it down should they continue to keep getting bombed. And what happened? They continue to keep getting bombed. It says Brent crude futures rose nearly 5% to the mid $98 a barrel range after tanker attacks near the Bab el-Mandeb Strait threatened another critical maritime choke point as the Strait of Hormuz remained partially disrupted. Now, earlier this year, gas prices went up, right? And that was the beginning of the conflict. Gas prices going up, going $5, certain places even $7. And it started to look bad. And then strategic reserves, oil reserves were being released. The strait got closed. But as you can see, Saudi Arabia, which produces a lot of oil, started to reroute through the Red Sea. So there was still some level of cushion, okay, that was out there, as well as the reserves of some of these other countries and finding ways around the strait. That came on top of them, so-called making a deal or getting close to making a deal, having a ceasefire with Iran, and sort of cooling things down a bit there. So that's why the prices start to come down and down and down and down and down. Trump came and announced a deal, and then oil prices dropped and blah blah blah, and now they're back up again. And now the escalation is much more than it was before. So the prices you saw before, should this continue, are going to go higher than that. The pain you felt before is going to be more because it's not just the escalation that is higher than before, but you don't have any more of the reserves. Saudi Arabia is now not being able to provide that extra cushion like before as much, because now they got to reroute. Instead of going through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, they got to try to go back up through the Suez Canal. And not too long ago, you actually had a ship that got stuck up in there, which there were reports about how that could have caused damage. Well, what you're seeing now is causing a lot more damage. So there's already warnings about this here. Let's see where we at. I'm going to actually jump down a little bit. It says on Wednesday night, we reported that Houthi militants targeted 2 Saudi Arabian tankers in the Red Sea, escalating the Gulf area conflict and threatening deeper energy supply disruptions. See that? Which spiked Brent above $95 in post-settlement trading. Here we go again. Murban futures surged to as much as $112.56 a barrel, a rise of 26% from Wednesday. Damn. That's crazy work. Okay. Hellyman Croft, head of global commodity strategy at RBC Capital Markets, warned clients earlier today that war enters a dangerous phase with the Red Sea and critical infrastructure at risk. Croft continued, while Brent prices have risen over 30% since July 1st, we still see them as a lagging indicator of the extreme pressure building in the region. When something is lagging, that means that it takes time to catch up, right? So it's not real time. It's not like what you're seeing is reflecting 100% of what's happening. But it's still some form of an indicator. It says here, given the dangerous escalation currently unfolding, we remain of the view that oil prices could potentially take out the Russia-Ukraine oil price highs of $128 a barrel. That means that oil prices could pass that in 2022, or even the 2008 peak of $146 a barrel. They're saying that it could pass that, especially in the worst case scenario of a full regional war. So now, he didn't mention how much he thinks it could go up to, but if it could pass 146, you're gonna be feeling some major pains. And not too long ago, once again, they published a plan for rationing, right, energy. Basically lockdowns, energy lockdowns. So it's just about the right opportunity to implement that. As this war continues to escalate, the Houthi entry into the conflict has the potential to expand the war's supply losses by reducing the effectiveness of the east-west pipeline offset route, meaning that how effective it is to reroute, from one part of the land where Saudi is to the other side. Now it's rendered useless because they're like, well, you can't get oil out through the right and you can't get it out through the left. So back up. Says here on Monday, Goldman commodities expert Dan Struven warned that Brent crude prices could surge above $120 a barrel by the fourth quarter if disruptions in the Hormuz maritime choke point persist. He noted, however, that such an outcome is not his base case. Now, let me mention that, once again, these are all forecasts based on what they're seeing now, right? Tomorrow, a week from now, a couple of days from now, that could change. That number can multiply, it can double, it can triple based on what ends up happening, in that region, okay? So we're in the times of, a lot of prophetic things taking place. And as the scriptures say, Ezekiel 7:5, and thus saith the Lord God, an evil and only evil, behold, is come. And that's the times we're in right now. All right, a time of only evil. And if you were wise and you were prudent, as the scriptures say, you would foresee the evil and hide yourself. And how do you hide yourself? By turning to the Lord. That's the only solution. What we're talking about here is world events. World. Okay? And it's going to affect the whole world. So, trying to find carnal means out of this is not going to be your solution. You have to, us hiding ourselves is by seeking divine help. That's how bad the situation is. All right. If nobody came up there and told you. Anyway, I'm going to end it there. Lord willing, that was edifying and informative unto the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Racha Kodash. And until next time, Shalom.